It's hard to talk about something you love in a negative light, especially when that thing is so rich and full of promise, and the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise pretty much perfectly embodies that. It is inconsistent disappointment a lot of the time with these games, and honestly, it's pretty easy to see why. It's become so symbolic with the franchise that every time new games come out, it's a drinking game with fans and internet goers to see just how lazy and bottom of the barrel the reviews can get.
There's one word that really describes Sonic and the Black Knight, and that word is Gil. Yeah.
Jump button can be fatally unresponsive at times, and it's just a lot of trial and error gameplay that can get a little bit repetitive after a while.
There are no good Sonic the Hedgehog games. There are no good Sonic the Hedgehog games. There are no good Sonic the Hedgehog games.
And before any of you ask, yes, those were all IGN clips. If they're going to be lazy and undescriptive with their problems on the Sonic franchise, I'm going to be lazy and undescriptive in my problems with their Sonic reviews. But I think we need to back off on the bad stuff for a second. It's not like this series was always so muddled in so much negativity and vitriol. The classic games from the 90s are still fondly remembered for introducing the world to the incredible icon, and I want to share my opinions on them to add a breath of fresh air to the constant negativity we see with this series. For this series of reviews, I'll be looking at the original Genesis trilogy of games in Sonic CD, since that game was an in-between of Sonics 2 and 3. Without further ado, let's start with the game that kickstarted it all, Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega Genesis. The year's 1985. The Nintendo NES has hit store shelves in America. The previously dormant video game industry was about to explode in a way we had never seen before. With titles like Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt, the system soon found itself a staple worldwide, selling over 60 million copies. If you didn't have a Nintendo, you weren't cool.
Now you're playing with power.
But as with all great empires, there are those who desire to see them fall. Enter Sega, a company that had moderate success overseas with their 8-bit console, the Sega Master System. But the North American market had been totally and utterly dominated by Nintendo, even with the Master System being technically superior to the NES. The guys over at Sega knew that if they wanted a piece of the now growing North American pie, they'd need some sort of strategy, and what could possibly be a better strategy than to act as the upstart rebel of the industry? It wasn't a bad idea either. Nintendo had intentionally set themselves up as a family-friendly, fun-for-all-ages sort of company, so a void was left in the cool and edgy market that teenagers of the 80s and 90s absolutely adored and ate up. It was a crack in the armor, and Sega was ready to take advantage. To do so, they needed firepower. No amount of bluster and gusto could overtake the market share Nintendo held, and by extension, the pop culture influence their IPs had firmly implanted into the hearts and minds of gaming fans everywhere. Sega needed an equivalent, a Bugs Bunny to Nintendo's Mickey Mouse. Several designs were thrown around, but the general theme was an animal mascot that would be cool and marketable. After the dust had settled, the team had come to the conclusion that their new mascot would be a blue hedgehog, colored that way to match their company logo. His shoes would be a love letter to American culture, both timeless and timely, with the shoe colors being red and white as a homage to Santa Claus, and the golden buckles being a reference to the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. The stage was set, the veteran with the successful franchise and millions of fans versus the unproven newcomer, ready to light up the gaming scene. Red versus blue, old school versus new school. It's the battle of the century between Mario and... Mr. Sonic! Sonic the Hedgehog! He was fast, he was cool, he was trash-talking Mario and Nintendo, and he wasn't backing down. His new Sega Genesis system was 16-bit and had blast processing, which was way better than the NES in its, not blast processing. Sega was here, and here to stay. Sonic the Hedgehog had arrived, and everyone was going to know his name. Like most games of this time period that weren't RPGs, the story is short, simple, and to the point. Sonic the Hedgehog is a fast blue hedgehog that lives on South Island, a mysterious island in the middle of the ocean that houses the Chaos Emeralds. And why is Sonic blue? How did he gain his speed? How and why were the Chaos Emeralds made? All of these questions and more are not answered here, as this game has not a single word of story dialogue to its name. Sure, in non-canon comics to the game, Sonic's lore is fleshed out, sometimes in less than desirable ways, but the games, for better or worse, stick to the less is more approach when it comes to how they write their stories. But I digress. Dr. Robotnik, or Eggman depending on your region, realizes the power of the Chaos Emeralds can be harnessed for his own gain and builds a base on the island, dubbed the Scrap Brain Zone. Robotnik uses his mad genius to enslave the island's inhabitants and force them into mechanical animal suits to search for the emeralds and simultaneously defeat Sonic, who Robotnik is well aware is on his way. And that's really it. Speed through 6 zones, beat Robotnik, and depending on if you get the Chaos Emeralds, watch a slightly different ending. Gameplay-wise, Sonic is fine. For the first game in a series, it's actually quite excellent when compared to Mario and Super Mario Bros. And Mega Man in the original Mega Man. Sonic flows excellently on the ground and in the air, allowing for enemy chains and precise jumps to be made with ease. One thing Sonic has that's fairly unique is a ball maneuver he can curl into while running. When you do this, Sonic's traction absolutely tanks, which allows him to gain speed on downward slopes and negate certain enemy threats. Do this at certain points and watch as Sonic blazes through the level at incredible speeds. Power-ups are also part of the equation, as Sonic has 3 to choose from. A shield, which grants him an extra hit from most obstacles, barring instant kills and drowning, speed shoes, which makes Sonic run incredibly fast for a short amount of time, and invincibility, which makes Sonic do exactly what it says it does and allows him to blow through stages without a care in the world. Also included in these monitors are 10 rings and extra lives, which are standard fare for these types of games. Sadly, the only monitors that are remotely common are 10 ring monitors, which are useful for keeping Sonic alive, as one hit without rings kills the blue rodent, but the lack of other monitors sprinkled through the levels makes the game feel fairly bland. It's nothing bad, but something future Sonic games thankfully improve on. Speaking of levels, how are they in this game? With a character like Sonic, special care must be taken to make sure the levels are long enough that they aren't painfully short, but also not slow and methodical slogs like that loser plumber Nintendo has. So Sega, show us what you got. Green Hill Zone. It's iconic, fast, with a good sense of how Sonic works and moves. The enemies are placed in ways to make the player use Sonic's abilities to progress and blaze through them, and none of the levels are too long. Excellent first stages that you will want to get used to because, trust me, they aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Marble Zone. You know what it's like sitting in a traffic jam and not knowing what the holdup is? That's this level. Slow, annoying, and an absolute mystery as to what happened between Green Hill Zone and here. Did the level designer just give up or forget what character this is? This plays more like a Mega Man stage than a Sonic stage, with the waiting around, timing jumps at a very slow speed, and vertical platforming. That's not a knock against Mega Man level design. I love those games, but that mentality does not belong in a Sonic game. It's a bland stage with music that doesn't do it any favors. Spring Yard Zone. It's better than Marble Zone, but that's not saying much. The stage has moments of speed, but it is more often than not going to be interrupted with slow elevator platforming and waiting for moving stairwells. Again, not very Sonic in design, but at least the music is decent, which makes the waiting a little more bearable. A fine zone, but it's not in my top 3. Labyrinth Zone. To the person who designed this level, who hurt you? I'm serious, this stage sucks no matter what way you slice it. Not only is it slow, full of vertical platforming and waiting around, but every issue is exacerbated by this thing called water. See, the guys who made Sonic, Yuji Naka and not Oto Oishima, I'm so sorry for butchering that, didn't realize that hedgehogs are capable of swimming and made it to where Sonic cannot swim. At all. And if you've ever tried running in water, you know that it's a pain in the butt, and it's only useful if you're trying to intentionally gimp your own movement. That's exactly what happened here, and no matter how many times I play this game, I just want to skip past this level or turn it off. It's absolute agony. Even the level music is just okay, nothing really special. But there's this one thing this stage has over every other stage in the game. The drowning theme. Seriously, when I first heard this theme as a child, it was like I was actually about to drown with Sonic. I was in a panic. Even now, that damn Pavlov effect loves to grip me every time I hear those first few notes, and I'll never forget the sheer terror this theme struck in me the first times I heard it. Bravo, Masato Nakamura. Should you ever need work, I would consider horror film soundtracks. It's really not a bad fit. Starlight Zone. could it be? Good fast-paced level design again? Oh, it's a miracle! And the music complements it so well. Oh my goodness, I thought we left fun behind in Green Hill Zone. The stage isn't quite as fast as that though, but I chalk that up more to it being a late game stage and the levels are trying a bit harder to slow you down. I'm not gonna chalk that to poor level design. Now the game's trying to make the player react more. React poorly and, well... It's a good fun level, and one that if they have to keep bringing back stages, I want this one next. I think it'd be really cool to see in HD. Sonic Generations 2 maybe? Scrap Brain Zone. Evil has a name, and it is Dr. Goddamn Robotnik. He wants you dead. He wants your family dead. He will kill you if it's the last thing he ever does, and this stage proves it. Come in here with less than your A-game, and you will take pot shots left and right like there is no tomorrow. Luckily, the stage isn't too cheap, I find, especially for a final zone. There are definitely beginner's traps all over the place, some of which are instant kill, but the stage does have plenty of rings to keep you alive, and if you take hits, it's almost always possible to at least survive and try again. The stage does suffer the same issues in design, with the platforming being more focused on reading and reacting to slower bits of platforms, but there are also areas where speed is required to make it past obstacles, like flamethrowers, spinning saws, and bomb-spewing pigs. It's a decent final level with some solid music to make the end of the game a very enjoyable but challenging run. As is tradition in a platformer, every zone needs a boss fight at the end, and in this case, Dr. Robotnik is willing to get his hands dirty and uses mechanical genius to fight. But I think someone forgot to tell Robotnik that in order to kill an incredibly fast hedgehog, one needs... speed? Maybe? Good god, it's almost embarrassing how slow and methodical these fights are. The boss music is cool and intimidating, but besides the first boss fight, which only gets by on nostalgia, and that's only just barely, every boss fight in this game is easy to a fault. In fact, the only two boss fights that are even remotely hard are the Labyrinth Zone boss, as if I needed more reason to dislike the zone, and the final boss. The Labyrinth Zone boss fight is a long vertical chase sequence filled with traps like spikes and fireballs constantly being spit at you. Even worse, there's rising water, which makes an area where speed is required now even harder because of the oil-like thickness the water has. It's not a fun fight at all. The final boss could definitely catch a new player off guard, especially considering the lack of rings and unpredictable way Robotnik exposes himself. But with some patience it's doable, and Robotnik finally falls. However, he manages to escape. Somehow. Sonic can't just jump on his ship and apprehend him? I mean, he's right there. Could just jump. Whatever, Sonic wins. Yay! But wait, Sonic needs to collect all the Chaos Emeralds to truly defeat Robotnik. And how does he do that? Simply collect 50 rings and jump into a giant ring at the end of the stage, of course. But wait, there's more. You have to complete an LSD trip that sends Sonic in a barely controllable spiral towards the Emerald. Sounds easy enough, right? Well, if you know the stages, it's a fairly comfortable challenge. On a first run through though, do not hold your breath. The levels are filled with tons of obstacles designed to blindside the player and keep the ring count low. Even if you do make it to the special stage, it's almost impossible to know how to get to the end of the stage and to the emeralds without a ton of trial and error. The stage is always rotating for one, which makes Sonic impossible to control in a traditional sense. He's always in his ball form, so kiss basic traction goodbye. You'll be praying to God the entire stage that it's merciful enough to not knock you into an exit plane, because if it does, you lose the chance at the emerald and have to start the next stage. With only 12 possible stages you can get emeralds in, you better be incredibly lucky or skilled when you go through these for the first time, or your hedgehog butt is getting the bad ending. Which, granted, isn't really that bad, but it's not 100%, and nowadays, most people playing Sonic 1 would like that achievement. Speaking of achievement, this game looks awesome. The art style has not quite been perfected yet, but Sonic and Robotnik have been given tons of personality in just a few limited sprite frames. Enemies are creative and the environments are colorful to boot. Not everything is a home run, but the love and care that went into the graphics is apparent. It wouldn't be possible without the blast processing the Genesis has. Now those of you that know games might think that I'm done. I've described the gameplay, the mechanics, the story, if we can even call it that. But there is one thing that I have not gone over. One thing that really hinders Sonic the Hedgehog as a whole. It's a small thing. And if you don't pay attention to game design or play games casually, you might not even notice the issue. It's something that once pointed out, I think it will change your mind on whether or not you want to play this game or not. So, without further ado, let's go into one of Sonic the Hedgehog's biggest, smallest problems. Look at Sonic's positioning on the screen. It looks fine, right? Dead center. He's the focus. But now let's look at Mario and his games. Where is he? That's right, he's towards the left. That promotes a stronger visual towards what's ahead of Mario, letting the player keep the pace up and create a route through the obstacles up ahead. It's a good idea that promotes speed in the player. Sonic 1 doesn't do this. With the camera or sprite size being directly on Sonic, potshots are inevitable. Whether it be your first run, or in my case, upteenth run, you will be getting hit a lot in this game. Even better, there's a glitch in this game where if Sonic gets hit and then lands on spikes, he has no invulnerability frames, or iframes for short. Sonic will just take the hit, lose his rings, take another hit on the spikes, and die. How is this allowed past playtesting? And okay, being honest, it doesn't pop up that often as to make the game a frustrating, unplayable mess, but it does mean that any first-time players unfortunate enough to fall into that trap are suddenly confused and have wasted a life, which this game doesn't have a ton of, so don't die too many times or you'll game over. Isn't that fun? Now granted, Sonic 1 isn't very hard, and there's a stage select in the title screen to make restarting where you left off a little easier, but dumb design should not need to be mitigated with alternative means. It just shouldn't be there to begin with. And now we have come to the verdict. Can I recommend Sonic the Hedgehog 1 to casual gamers, or just fans of 2D platformers in general? As much as it pains me to say it, not really. Sonic 1, as iconic and important to gaming as it is now buried under better games both in its own franchise and in the genre. I can only recommend this game to people curious enough to play it and to Sonic fans. In that sense, you'll most likely find some enjoyment out of it, but if you've never played this game and aren't sure you'll like it, I'd suggest looking for other later games in the classic series. This one is just too rough around the edges to fully recommend. Well guys, with that, Sonic the Hedgehog 1 has been fully reviewed, but we still have 3 games left in this classic series lineup, and next time we're looking at Sonic the Hedgehog 2, a lot of people's favorite classic Sonic game. But is it mine? You'll have to wait and see. Guys, if you've stuck around and watched this entire thing, it greatly warms my heart. Makes me feel all nice and good inside. If you have any constructive criticism for this review, or just experiences with Sonic 1 you'd like to share, comment section is yours down below. I am always down there reading and appreciating what you guys have to say. But remember, please, be nice to each other, have a great day, and I will see you guys with the next review. Ciao. Hey, did you like the review? Would you like to make sure you can see more of them? Well, now you can. I've set up a Patreon account where you can pay me once a month to see your names at the end of reviews, get early access to said reviews, and even join a Discord server full of fans like you. And at the highest reward tier, you can even request and work on a review with me. So what are you waiting for? Come on over and join the fun. Please? I mean, I'm waiting right here. I have nothing better to do, really. I mean, not like I sit waiting all day at the Patreon just for someone to come over here and maybe not pay me money. I mean, it'd be pretty cool. I mean, I'm going into college soon, and hey, wait, don't take away the mic.